Your path is kind of cool. I noticed too. Like you're a professor, but you didn't go to, Harvard, Stanford, Yale.
Not the Harvard, Stanford, Yale. Let's survive.
How did you do that? Just by writing?
I wrote a lot.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
Like Hamilton, write like you can't stop. I love writing.
Is that like how did you end up? Like you just love writing, and then it was just like a natural.
It's a passion. I love writing, and I write nonstop.
Yeah.
That's something I very much enjoy doing.
Do you like teaching?
Love teaching. Best job in the world.
Honestly, because like I kind of want to do it, but I don't think they'll let me.
We'll chat later. Catch up a bit.
Yeah, I am interested in that. Are you done? Do you have any classes left?
I have something today and all my classes tomorrow. I have one class.
And then that's it. Yeah, well, that's so crazy.
You done or?
I have one more at evidence tomorrow, and then I have two at evidence and First Amendment that are right at the end of the thing. My other class was a paper, which I passed out because I don't think he's going to like the topic, but I guess we'll see.
What was the paper?
For common law theory.
Wow.
So, yeah, argued in favor of the Ninth Amendment, more rights,
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. Abolishing rational basis.
All right, I'm gonna get started. If that's okay with you.
Yes.
All right. There's hold on. I'm waiting for someone to join the Zoom. Sorry.
That's okay. He can come on whenever he comes in. That's fine.
Yeah.
Hello, come in, guys.
There.
Hello. Come on in. Hello. All right, now we get started. Okay. It's a pleasure to be here. I love coming to Brooklyn. I'm actually from Staten Island, so this is like my refuge in the wilderness of Brooklyn, where they didn't want my vaccine card. In Texas, we don't actually have a vaccine app. I thought my card was a forgery. This is all we have. I have this little cardboard thing. So I'm grateful to let me in the building. But it's good to be here. The topic today is the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and 3D printed guns. You get not one constitutional, you get two for the price of one. And this is a very cool topic because it brings together law and technology in sort of an unorthodox way. So let's start talking about 3D printing for a bit. Anyone ever 3D print anything? Yeah, what'd you make?
So my cousin has a 3D printer, and I made like this little boat thing.
A boat? Okay, cool. You like it?
It didn't come out well.
Didn't come out well. That's okay. That's okay. Anyone else? All right. 3D printing is a technology that lets you design an object on the screen, a car or a house, and then create it in reality. And the process of creating code to 3D print is actually fairly straightforward. So here's a very simple design. You want to make a sphere with a radius of 10 inches. It spits it out. You want to make a cylinder with a height of 20 inches and a radius of 5. In very simple, plain language, I can explain to you how to make a 3D object. Okay? You can make lots of trinkets and doodads and gadgets. You can make translucent things with different shapes and sizes. This is what a 3D printer looks like. Here they're actually designing a race car. Okay. You can even make parts of the human anatomy. Here you can see they're sculpting a human brain. Let me turn the lights off. Yeah, hit the lights. I think this might be the... There is no light. There we go. Okay, very good. Thank you. That's a little bit better. Okay, so you can't really see, but it's blurry. They're creating the anatomy of the human brain. All right, so how does a 3D printer actually work? It's a process that's very similar to making a candle, right? How do you make a candle? You take a wick, you dip in the wax, you pull it out. You dip in the wax, you pull it out. You keep dipping, dipping, dipping. And that's really the way you make, that's how you make a candle. 3D printing works in a similar fashion. But instead of dipping something in wax, you're spraying a very fine layer of plastic. One layer on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, and you have this little thing that moves around, goes up and down to create an object. Here, there's a ball. You also have a heated bed as well to keep the plastic hot. All right, so now I want to show you a demonstration where we're actually 3D printing an object. When you see what it is, shout it out, okay? So here's the first level. It's sort of this honeycomb shape. Second, third, fourth, you see it's kind of getting bigger and bigger. Fifth, anyone see it yet? Statue, okay, we're on the right track. Sixth,
Is it a frog?
frog, very close.
Turtle.
A bullfrog.
You're on the right track. Good job knowing the difference between a frog and a bullfrog. Next. Yeah, let's see it. Huh? Still? No? Now?
Yoshi.
You're really close, actually. You're like 2 letters off, actually.
Yoda.
There it is.
Oh.
So close. Frog. Okay. There it is.
Oh, I
Now,
think
now, see, everyone
now
sees
I
it.
see it.
Now you see it, right? Anyways, this is Yoda from, not Baby Yoda, the actual Yoda from Star Wars. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, there it is. Right? What this demonstrates is that in a very short period of time, you can create a lifelike, or at least a movie-like depiction of a character. Now, I don't have any artistic skills. I can't sculpt. I can't use clay. I can't use stone. But I can do this fairly easily. I can print this. But you didn't invite me here to talk about 3D printing Yoda, right? Why'd you invite me here? Talk about 3D printing of, come on in, 3D printing of guns. Now, I do not have any actual plastic guns here. Mayor Adams will probably arrest me in 3 seconds. I dare not bring one to the state. I have pictures, though. I think those are legal, at least outside of Jersey. Oh, I got a good Cuomo story. So, okay, I'll tell it for him because he likes it, right? So, for the past 8 years, I've represented Defense Distributed. Cody Wilson was a law student at UT, but he made international headlines because he designed the first 3D printed guns. He developed what's called a AR-15 lower receiver, which is the plastic frame that can be used to operate a firearm. What really put Cody on the map was this. What the hell is this? This is the Liberator. It's a fully functional plastic handgun. The blue part is the handle. The white part is the receiver. This is the guts of the gun. These little squigglies are the springs. The only metal part of this gun is the bullet, very small bullet, which goes into the barrel, and the nail, which is a firing pin. How does the gun work? You strike the back of the bullet, and it goes boom, right? The gunpowder. Cody developed this gun back in 2011 or so. You see there's a rope here. Why is there a rope? Because plastic is a very bad material to make a gun out of. Right? When plastic gets hot, it melts. When plastic gets cold, it cracks. So the idea of having a gun made of plastic is just insane. It's mostly a political statement. It doesn't actually work for any good. This rope is yours to test it. You would put the rope on the trigger and stand 10 feet away and pull it. That way you don't blow off your fingers. Okay. But this gun made international headlines. I'll get to the Cuomo story a little bit later. It's good, I promise. So is there a problem, right? Is there anything illegal about 3D printing firearms? So when most people think of 3D printed guns, this is what they have in mind, right? You press a button, and it pops out your printer, right? This is not real. This is not how real things actually work. In reality, making a gun is very easy. I hope the people don't hear this in Brooklyn, right? It's very easy. So there's something called a zip gun, right? A zip gun is a homemade gun you can make with spare parts you find around the house. I found this design online. This is a gun. It's made from a soldering iron and a garden hose. Fully functional gun. A hell of a lot more effective than a plastic gun I could add. This one's my favorite. They took a flashlight keychain, right? The little keychain flashlights. They hollowed it out and made it into a firearm. Very easy. Now, the next video, the next demonstration, do not try this at home. Please do not. These guys will make a rifle out of a rubber tube and a metal pipe. A fully functional rifle. How? The end of the metal pipe will be the firing pin. It's a sort of sharp edge, which they're going to jam into the back of the shotgun shell. So they load in this red shotgun shell to the tube, and they're going to jam a metal pipe. Now, look at this picture carefully. What's wrong with this picture? What's problematic here?
His hand is by the exit point.
Yeah, his hand is at the barrel, right? So, okay, never do that. So what else is wrong with this picture? Yeah.
There's not much distance in front of him.
Yeah, they're inside. And let me give you one more. See this in the corner? What's that? The next frame, it'll clear. Right. So basically, they're shooting into a cardboard box, I don't know, about 6 inches below an outlet. You can't aim this thing very well. You shoot this thing. Okay, but anyway, these guys are idiots. They're idiots. Brooklyn, do not try this at home. You will get arrested and you'll get thrown in jail. The only offense you can actually be thrown in jail for is a gun offense now, right? You will not get bail for this. No, there will not be bail. You'll be sent to like Rikers, if it even exists anymore. Boom. And look at that, 10 fingers, right? Fully functional shotgun with about $10 in parts you can buy at Home Depot. So the reason why I show this demonstration is to illustrate that 3D printed guns are largely, how do I put it, about ginning up fear. These are not plausible ways of making firearms. They're not safe. You still need metal parts. They will be detectable. Now, is there anything illegal? So in recent, actually, last week or so, the answer to this has actually kind of changed, although not really. Our friends at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has actually ruled that certain types of so-called ghost guns are illegal. But curiously, they didn't add 3D printed guns to the list. You can still print your own weapons. You can still make your own guns. You just can't buy these called gun kits that they sell in the store with these partially finished guns. So even the new Biden regulations don't really affect what I'm working on here, which is 3D printed firearms. After almost 2 years of thinking about it, they didn't do anything of substance. I was actually surprised how low key their regulation was. But the primary ground of attack here is not even on the printing of the gun itself. It's on the First Amendment. Why? So far, the way governments have tried to stop 3D printed guns has not been the blocking of the printing. They've taken it one level earlier. They've actually tried to stop the sharing of the code necessary to make the guns. And this is where the First Amendment comes into play. You probably know from your classes that the First Amendment prohibits what's called a prior restraint of speech. The government cannot stop publication or the sharing of information about speech. Right? And we've argued for years that bans on the sharing of these 3D printed gun files is itself a prior restraint of speech. So you might say, wait a minute, Josh, this speech is dangerous. Well, yeah, lots of speech is dangerous. If you ever use the Anarchist Cookbook, this is basically terrorist hand guide, right? You can use it to make bombs, make poison, make various things. Lots of speech can be dangerous. You say, wait a minute, Josh, that's a book. Book is speech. Well, guess what? Information is speech too. And I showed you earlier the code necessary to make the 3D printed gun. It's completely understandable. You create an object in 3 dimensions. It becomes a real-life object. And the Supreme Court has held that the creation and dissemination of information are speech, protected by the First Amendment. Speech is everywhere. Code is everywhere. But this right's also reflected by the Second Amendment as well, which does apply in New York City. You might get concealed carry in a few months. Who knows? Imagine that. You won't be able to carry anywhere of use. We might actually get some, New Yorkers make it so hard to carry, it's going to be impossible. There'll be nowhere in the city you can carry. Like even public sidewalks, it's going to be impossible. So don't get hopes up too quickly. Move to Texas. We need more like you in Texas. Anyway. The Second Amendment provides a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We have two leading Supreme Court precedents. The first is D.C. v. Heller. This is Dick Heller. Mr. Heller was a security guard. His job was to guard the security of judges. He worked for the federal courts. So today he had a gun to guard judges, and at night when he went home, he couldn't defend his own home. He applied for a gun permit in D.C. They said, "You idiot, you can't get one." They denied his permit. That's called standing. And he took that to federal court, and he was able actually to win a case at the U.S. Supreme Court 5-4. D.C. v. Heller, 2008, held that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to keep and bear arms. 2 years later, the court decides McDonald against Chicago. This case challenged Chicago's handgun ban. This is Otis McDonald. And once again, the Second Amendment prevailed. The court held that the Second Amendment is incorporated against the states and limits the state power. There's a photo of Heller and McDonald. All right. But Heller and McDonald were very narrow decisions, right? All those cases said is that there's a right to keep a gun in the house. Those cases didn't even talk about the right to carry, which is why there's the carry case this term. But I want to make 2 points, right? First, I want to argue that there's actually a right to acquire arms. Think of it this way. If the government banned the sale of arms altogether, you can have a gun, but you can't buy a new one. I think that would actually be unconstitutional. And this is not an abstract point. During the COVID pandemic, a number of jurisdictions actually banned the sale of guns because they were non-essential, right? Courts actually held that was unconstitutional. You could prohibit gun sales outright, although some courts went the other way. The second point I want to make is actually a right to make arms. This is actually a little bit stronger. Long before there were guns, where people made their own weapons. We fought a revolution with homemade muskets and homemade musket balls. There's a very deeply rooted right of people making their own guns. So even the Biden Justice Department has not tried to ban homemade weapons. They only banned these so-called gun kits. So I think they even left that part there. Now, we're talking here about the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. This reflects what's often called a hybrid right. When two rights reinforce each other, it's even stronger. So, speaking about guns is a very, this sort of concerted act. So you can't stop people from speaking about their constitutional rights. All right. So what federal laws actually exist now? There is the Undetectable Firearms Act. This was passed in 1988 when none of you were born. It was actually enacted to make sure that all guns had a certain quantity of metal in them to trigger a magnetometer. This law was passed largely because of the Glock handgun, which was a very popular handgun in the 80s. People were afraid, oh my God, it's this plastic gun. Oh no, this is sad. Bruce Willis, this is the first time I've had this slide since he came out as having mental lapse. It's very sad. But anyway, you've all seen Die Hard, or at least heard of it. Anyways, this is from the Die Hard movie in the 80s. There was this one line where he goes, luggage, that punk pulled a Glock 7 on me. You know what that is? It's a porcelain gun made in Germany. It doesn't show up in airport X-ray machines, and it costs more than what you make in a month. Everything he said is false, right? There is no Glock 7. It's not made of porcelain, it's made of metal, and it's made in Austria, not in Germany. So the entire thing was false. There was this panic about these Glock handguns. Also, is a very common a gun reference in rap songs because of what it rhymes with. Okay, it's true. So there have been efforts to ban. It's true. There have been efforts to ban. There have been efforts to ban 3D printed guns. Your senior senator from New York, Senator Schumer, tried to ban these some years ago. He failed. He's always with these press conferences with these signs. There have been attempts to, let's say, ban the materials used to 3D print guns. Well, guess what? You can 3D print metal. So this is actually a 1911 handgun made in Texas, entirely out of metal. You can 3D print metal. So the primary mechanism by which states have tried to restrict 3D printed guns has been export controls. Maybe you've come across the ITAR, which is the International Traffic in Arms Regulation. This is a law that makes some sense, right? If I want to send Stinger missiles to Ukraine, I should probably get the government's permission first, right? We don't want to start exporting arms to other countries without adequate vetting. I think it's a good law, all right? But the problem is the government's taken the position that code is an export. And they effectively wanted you to seek permission to export code. And by the way, exporting code means putting a file on the internet. Putting a file on the internet has been deemed an export. It's merely sharing code that can be downloaded. Email, can't do that either. That's sharing code. Okay, that history brings us to the litigation. Back in 2013, again, Cody Wilson, my client, made international headlines by sharing the files needed to 3D print a fully functional firearm. The U.S. State Department sent him a letter saying that your sharing of files, your speech, is illegal. And they demanded that they take these files down immediately. Now, Cody, though an anarchist, complied with these rules, and he hired lawyers. One of them was myself. And we've been engaged in litigation now for almost 8 years, challenging this regime. And I'll give you kind of just a sketch because there's a lot going on. First, we sued the State Department. And we said the State Department's imposition of this licensing requirements, prior restraint of speech. We won we lost the district court. We lost the Supreme Court at the circuit court, and the Supreme Court denied review. And the funny thing happened. After it came back down from the Supreme Court, there was a new president in town, and his administration settled with us. We reached a settlement with the Trump State Department. Okay. So that looks good, right? So we reached a settlement with the State Department. Everything's cool. The settlement was to go into effect on a Friday. That Monday, we get this frantic motion from the gun control groups, the Brady campaign, Everytown, Michael Bloomberg, and they sue us, saying that we are that our settlement agreement is actually a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. I know that was a thing, and they asked a federal district court in Austin to block our settlement. So we had to basically swoop in, and we actually argued the case, arguing that this gun control group had no basis to block our settlement. The court ruled for us. Okay, great. So Friday afternoon, we put all these files online. Right? They're there. They're everywhere on the internet. But then I started thinking, like, we're going to get sued some more. So I said, let's go on offense, right? So I prepared this lawsuit to be filed in Texas against the New York Attorney General, the New Jersey Attorney General, and all these other AGs who would start to harass us. So we were going to file it Sunday afternoon. That gets crazy. About 30 minutes before we're supposed to file, I get a phone call from the Pennsylvania AG, Shapiro. And he says, we are seeking a TRO against you in Eastern District of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, to block you from publishing the files. And I said, you realize we published them already? He's like, you did? They didn't even know. So this is Sunday afternoon. The judge calls a TRO hearing by phone within an hour. And I'm not kidding you. I'm sitting there at LaGuardia Airport, about to take off our flight, listening to this judge. I'm like, Judge, we put the files online already. And I give him an option. He said, Judge, let me try this, right? What happens if we block Pennsylvania IP addresses? Would you deny the TRO? He's like, yes. So we actually created the first ever state-by-state IP blockage. That's never been done before. This is like North Korea level censorship. We imposed this on ourselves. We created what we call the blue wall to basically wall off Pennsylvania. Okay, the next day we got sued by New Jersey. And New Jersey, I'm not kidding you, sued us in Essex County Chancery Court, Newark. They sought a nationwide injunction against a Texas company in New Jersey Chancery Court on the theory that putting files on the internet is a nuisance. Like if your neighbor's making noise, right? They said they made a nuisance. And at this hearing for this really nice judge, I think actually the best judge we had the entire hearing, saying, Judge, this is a Chancery Court. You didn't have jurisdiction to give us a nationwide injunction. You lack jurisdiction. He's like, you might be right. So I said, I'll tell you what, we will put New Jersey behind our blue wall. I actually called it that. But New Jersey behind our blue wall will block IP. He's like, that's fine. So New Jersey denies the TRO. Then we get sued by 26 states. Washington, Seattle leads the way, involving New York and all these other blue states. New Jersey sued us twice. He sued us in New Jersey and Washington, because why the hell not, right? And so I had a hearing that Monday evening, and this district court judge in Seattle didn't really care what we had to say. I gave a 20-minute oral argument. He asked me one question. What was that question? Mr. Blackman, do you represent all the parties? I'm like, uh-oh. He wanted to make sure his injunction would stick. So he ruled against us. And at the end, I said, Judge, I want to be clear. Are you telling my client to take down these files? Like, no, I'm not telling him to take down anything. But if he doesn't take it down, it's a violation of the law. So I had to call my client and have this very, heart-to-heart conversation saying, we lost. I had worked almost 100 hours in 5 days. It had been an insane blitz. I was around the clock, and then we lost, so we had to take down the files. But they were everywhere. And then about an hour after we lost, and I took down the files, my phone rings. Okay? It's a blocked number. I'm like, uh-oh. And I pick up, and he says, I swear, I'm not joking. He says, "This is Governor Andrew Cuomo." I'm like, fuck. He said, "This is Governor Cuomo." I was like, "Hello, Governor." He's like, "Do you represent the gun guy?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." He was like, "You tell your client, take down his files now." I said, "Governor, your attorney general sued us and got a nationwide injunction about an hour ago." He's like, "Well, you know what? She doesn't work for me." Ironic, right? He wanted credit for taking down the files himself. He didn't want his AG to get. He said, "No, you take it down because I said so." I'm like, "Okay, fine." I was like, "You know what? You tell your lawyer to send me a letter and I'll be happy to read it." He's like, "Okay, fine." Okay. And then he starts talking to me how the AG in New York's independent elected. He doesn't, she doesn't work for him. And I said, I know. I said, "I'm from New York. I'm from Staten Island. And, I know this works." I said, "You're from Staten Island? Why are you in Texas?" Like, "Well, I like it in Texas." And he goes on this entire rant about how you should come back to New York. That's so wonderful. This served as a threat, a demand call. And then it gets even better. It was July 31st. And I said, "You know what, Governor? Today's my parents' anniversary. I have to go give them a call." He's like, "You know what? You tell your parents Andrew Cuomo wished them a happy anniversary." I'm like, "Okay, thank you." It gets better. He's like, "By the way, who are your parents voting for?" This was in 2018. I'm like, "I think they're Democrats." They'll vote for. She's like, "Okay, good. Make sure they vote for me in the election." I'm like, "Okay, thank you, Governor." It's on for 20 minutes. And I was like, "Thank you, Governor Cuomo." Anyway, so that was my wild ride with the New York electoral politics. This is your bailiwick. So Andrew Cuomo threatened me on the phone, then asked my parents' vote. Go figure, right? That's how it works. But we weren't done yet, right? So even after the TROs were issued, we had litigation in the Third Circuit. We had litigation in the Ninth Circuit. We had litigation in the Fifth Circuit, right? Still without a clear ruling. Then President Biden came into office, and guess what? Positions flipped again. So now we're currently litigating against the State Department and the New Jersey Attorney General simultaneously in District Court in New Jersey and in the Fifth Circuit in Texas. I hope to have a clear resolution at some point. This case never seems to end. But this has just been sort of this wild ride that I've really enjoyed. What's perhaps beneficial for my client is that his file has been online now for almost 8 years. You can get them. Well, actually, you can if you're a New York resident. But any other place, you can actually get access to them. You guys are behind the blue wall. You're the sheeple, as he calls you. There's actually a picture of a blue wall with a sheep in front of it, and that's called the sheeple. But in virtually every other place in the country, you're able to download these files, have access to them. And I think this is if nothing else, this litigation sort of maintain the status quo. But hopefully we get a resolution from some court saying that we're doing is legal. All right. I will stop here. And happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
So does anyone have any questions?
I'm curious about your reference to hybrid right? I'm not sure how sure I'm sold on that doctrine. Like, shouldn't each constitutional claim stand on its own merit? Like, does it necessarily get any special protection because it crosses boundaries? Like, shouldn't they each be claimed be treated individually?
Sure. Right. So the concept of hybrid rights is not well developed. Perhaps a clearer statement came in a case called Employment Division versus Smith. This was a Scalia free exercise case. And I'll give you an example, right? Let's say that the government passes a law saying it's a crime to pray in public, right? Is that a violation of free exercise or free speech or both? What Scalia suggests is that it's sort of both, hybrid, right? They sort of work together. When you have one right, it reinforces the other. The courts never really come back to it. So I don't have a lot to say about the hybrid rights because the court doesn't seem particularly interested in it. But I do think it does illustrate a point that they're coming after not just speech on any topic, but speech after a topic that is constitutionally protected. So that's sort of the basis for that argument.
Mm-hmm. And so you think that those should get some kind of heightened scrutiny?
I do. I think there's a greater level of scrutiny when you have sort of censorship. I give an example that sort of cuts the other way. Let's say that Texas passes a law banning printing of books about how to perform an abortion, right? So there you have the right to perform an abortion, putative at least, along with the right of free speech. So these rights seem to reinforce each other.
Actually,
Yeah.
you probably mentioned it, but your client, is this still a private individual, or is this, because it seems like you'd have to be very wealthy to fight all these battles on local front. Is he being funded by like a repairing crew?
Well, he sells products, right? So the company is called Defense Distributed, right? Defense Distributed. They're based in Austin, Texas, right? The files themselves are basically available for free. I think they'll sell to you in a thumb drive if you want, but they're available for files for free. What makes the most money is a device called the Ghost Gunner, right? What is the Ghost Gunner? All right, so let me take a step back and talk about gun manufacturing for a bit. The most important part of a gun is what's called the receiver, right? The receiver is just basically this block of metal that sort of holds all the parts of the gun together. The receiver is only part of the gun the government cares about, right? If you buy a receiver in a store, you can go through a background check from the licensed dealer. You're allowed to make your own receivers, but you have to basically take a block of metal and drill various holes in it and machine it and do stuff to it. Cody built a device called the Ghost Gunner. Okay, the Ghost Gunner is a device. You put a block of metal in it, and it drills all the holes automatically. It's basically like a machine, and it drills all the holes. This device costs a few $1,000s. And with this device, you can turn a block of aluminum into a gun receiver. There's a waiting list that's very long for this device. So I think the short answer is that he does well. I do it mostly pro bono. I mean, in theory, I keep my hours. I'm hoping that one day the government loses and they pay my bills. It would be very happy if the governor of New Jersey or the governor of New York writes me a check. That'd be lovely. I'm not counting on it happening, but that's mostly what I do. I do this for passion. It's something I love very much. I did bill, though, for the 100 hours and 5 days. That's why I can tell how many hours I spent, because that was kind of like a blitz. Like, when you get sued by 20-something attorneys general, that's intimidating, right? I mean, and we had to file briefs in 4 different jurisdictions. And let me tell you, New Jersey doesn't accept electronic filing. It's freaking fax. It's still fax today. Okay, so you got a fax. I don't even have a fax machine. Someone has to fax it for me. What do I know? I'm sitting in my office all day working. But it was a remarkable experience. But Cody is a true believer. He really believes in this idea that the government shouldn't have monopoly on firearms. And I think his technology proves that no matter what they try, as I say, the signal will not be stopped. Yes.
So he's selling this Ghost Gunner now. Like this is.
I don't think he'll ship it to your state, but he'll ship it to most states.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I think there are restraints on where he'll ship it based on litigation. I think New Jersey and New York are behind the blue wall. But really, I just want to pause on this for a second. I just made that stuff up in the middle of a TRO hearing. That wasn't a thing, right? I mean, never before in American history has someone blocked IP addresses from a particular state because there's no reason to do that. Like, we had to actually figure that out, like, in a very short period of how to even do that. I asked Cody, can you do this? Like, yeah. I'm like, okay, this is what I'll tell the judge. Because we needed something. Because if the answer was, we can't do that, you shut it down nationwide or even global. The New Jersey, the Attorney General said, well, we sent someone, I'm not kidding you, to, like, Edison, New Jersey, right near where the Statue of Liberty is, and we picked up a New York cell tower. So we were kind of in New Jersey, and we had all these stories, and so I was like, leave me alone, right? Because what they really wanted was to shut down sharing files nationwide just for one state. And of course, you can create a VPN and various spoofing of IP address, but what we provide, I think, was more than enough. Good question. Your turn. Going around the room. Yeah.
Wait, so could you cross state lines with the device that you sells? Like bringing it to New York?
Well, you're talking about the files or the gun itself?
I guess either.
Well, it would make a difference, right? Which thing that we're talking about here, right? Under New Jersey law, New Jersey has a specific statute. If you were to, I think you keep the files to yourself. If you were to share the file with someone else in New Jersey, it would actually be a crime. If you were to actually print the gun in New Jersey, I think it would also be a crime. New York has a law, I think, restricting the printing of the gun. I don't think they have a law. The New York law is ambiguous whether it applies to the files. We're actually not sure. It's not been litigated. But New Jersey does squarely apply to the files. So it really does vary what you're doing with the files in which state. The ghost gunner, I think, would be legal in New Jersey and New York. So it comes to Texas. Yeah. Okay.
How did the files gain that much attention? Like, I mean, I've never heard of this. Like, how did all these attorney generals hear about this? Is it like they communicate with each other and like say something?
I mean, look, so there are various gun control groups like Michael Bloomberg's Every Time for Gun Safety, and they're obsessed with this topic. They're focused on it. And there have been public meetings between these various groups and the state AG. So, I mean, they learn about it. This is not a terribly popular technology. Most guns on the street are not 3D printed, and it's sort of just like this issue, oh, ghost guns, they'll scare you, right? But what did us in, and this was a mistake we made, was we publicized the settlement before it went public. That was a mistake. We shouldn't. I'm to blame with a couple others, but we shouldn't have publicized it before it went public. And because we did, we gave them a heads up to bring these lawsuits against us. If we had said nothing, this case would have been over. They would have done something else, but that case would have been over.
Are you kind of bound by like the same laws that gun stores would be? Like, for instance, you have to comply with pistol laws. Like in New York, you need to show proof of a pistol ID before you obtain a pistol from that store. So is it the same way that they have to show you they have a pistol license to get?
Well, I mean, the idea is our site is not registered with the ATF, right? We don't have what's called FFL, a federal firearm license. And they would never give us one if we applied for it, right? Because people are making the guns on their own. We're not actually selling guns. We're simply sharing the information about how to make the guns. So part of the rub here is that we do not have these restrictions. Yeah.
Your client, is he the only one doing something like this? I would assume that there are many more.
There are other people online who do it, but no one to the scale Cody does it. I mean, I mentioned earlier the new ATF regulations. The ATF is trying to ban various gun kits. We'll see what the courts say about it. But the ATF didn't touch Cody's business. So, of all the things they've done, they basically gave him more market share by banning the competitors, which is sort of perverse. And the reason why they didn't go after Cody was, imagine this regulation. A block of metal is a gun, right? All you're doing is drilling holes in a block of metal. They can't ban the block of metal. And they can't ban a device used with holes and drills and things, right? And they can't ban it. Now, what Cody does to get around these various internet regimes is he'll mail you an SD card or a thumb drive and just load the firmware right into the device. So there's no risk. You just mail it to the person. It's bizarre. The government's okay if you mail the stuff to the post office, but you can't email it. Okay. Because, if it goes to the internet, someone can intercept the file somewhere in the cloud. I don't know. But the post office is good.
What is their ground?
Sure.
How do you even, how is that not just like a per se?
Right. So the basis for the laws is actually the export control law. That's the ITAR I mentioned earlier. So the fear is, if you put a file on the internet, some foreign national can download it and use it to harm American interests. So the internet can be downloaded anywhere, which is why we built these sort of very state-specific regimes that you can't download unless you're in a certain spot. We can verify driver's licenses, different things to see where you actually are. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing.
I just can't help but think of communist ideology though, and stuff like why, what I mean? In theory, you could, that could be dangerous by sharing information. I just it just seems like a weird grounding to face in the First Amendment that you can't share this.
Well, I mean that's Cody's argument, right? That this is just fascism, right? The entire notion that you can even stop the sharing of information is antithetical. If this wasn't guns, right? And I use this example in the brief, right? Let's just say that Alabama had passed a law which bans the 3D printing of sex toys. I know it's going to get your attention with that one, right? There is not a single doubt that we struck down 9-0, right? That'd be done. No doubt 9-0 that's unconstitutional. But the second you go from sex toys to guns, ooh, guns are scary, right? Anyway, yeah, that's a little bit of a rant, but it's true. Yeah, the example we used was, let's say the U.S. government bans the 3D printing of sex toys because someone from a Middle Eastern nation might download it and affect foreign relations with one of those countries, right? Or you make an example.
But there are laws against obscenity and stuff like that. It's it's not. I'm saying it's not
Yeah.
this. It just seems so weird that seems arbitrary.
Yeah.
Just generally, these guns are that Cody sells the plans for. These are like generally relatively rudimentary. It's not like they're like massive automatic
Right, so-
weapons
so-
that have some national security.
Well, yes and no. Right. So the actual guns that are being sold, the actual 3D printed guns are pretty crappy. They shoot one bullet and they're not very safe. Right. If you don't treat the plastic the right way, the thing can melt in your hand and blow off your fingers. You can use the 3D printers to print various gun parts, which could be used for different types of weapons. Cody doesn't share those files, but you could.
So, Senate candidate in Arizona, Blake Masters, he,
Oh, I know Blake. Yeah.
yeah, so he was posting the other day about the ghost gun ban. He posted a photo of his ghost gun.
Yeah, I bet he
saying
has
how
one.
like now it's illegal. But so what I'm trying to understand is, so if you made your ghost gun before they were made illegal, you're still allowed to keep it. Is what I'm trying to figure out. Like, based on
Under the
what
new
you said.
ATF regulations, I think that's right.
Okay, that's what. Yeah, so I wasn't sure how.
I haven't reviewed all this. They're very long, but I think that's right.
Okay. So that seemed a little bit confusing because it didn't seem like they would let you keep them afterwards. But I guess
Oh, the feds have taken different positions there with respect to bump stocks, which is a sort of device that can make a regular rifle kind of mimic an automatic motion. They've taken the position that they've always been illegal, therefore you can't have it, right? So you have to surrender them immediately.
Right. Okay.
Questions you got? Thank you so much. I appreciate your attention. Good to be here in Brooklyn. Thank you. And to Zoomland, hello, hello.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, one.
This one's online.